If you've been joining us for the month of April, May, and June, we've been having conversations with the candidates running for statewide office for Lieutenant Governor, Attorney General, and Governor. Well, today, we have our special guest, the Governor of the Commonwealth of Virginia, Ralph Northam, is here to join us to talk about his efforts to reopen Virginia, highlights of his administration, and the importance to vote in the June primary. This is Stay the Water. I'm your host, Dr. Eric Claville, and we'll be back in just a moment. Welcome back, and thank you for joining us here on Stay the Water, here on WNSB at Norfolk State University, the green and gold. I'm your host, Dr. Eric Claville, and we're so happy that you're joining us on this beautiful Sunday here in Hampton Roads. I tell you what, you know, with seeing all the people out, seeing businesses opening, and seeing just all the great graduations that are taking place, it seems that things are getting back to normal. But keep in mind that we want you to continue to stay safe, continue to adhere to your health professionals' advice, because we will continue to get through this together. If you've been joining us in the month of April, May, and also June, we've been talking with candidates who have been running for statewide office to represent you here in the Commonwealth. We've talked with the candidates who are running for Lieutenant Governor, candidates who are running for Attorney General, and also candidates who are running to be the next governor of our great Commonwealth. But today, we've got a great treat for you here on WNSB, Stay the Water, and in Hampton Roads. We have with us Governor Ralph Northam, who is here to join us to talk about the reopening of Virginia, highlights of his administration, and the importance to vote in this June primary. Governor Northam, thank you so much for joining us on Stay the Water.
Hey, Eric, it's good to be with you. Thanks so much for having me. And, you know, as I always like to say, behold the green and gold. I hope the Spartans and everybody listening today is safe and healthy. And as you said, we're looking forward to getting back to as near normal as we can. It's been a tough year for everybody, but, you know, Virginia's done well overall. And I'm pleased with where we are right now, and look forward to good things happening. Absolutely.
Absolutely. You know, we were talking before the show, and I was saying, I can't believe it's been almost 4 years, you know, since you took the oath of office. You know, my family and I, Michelle and the two boys, Ian and Ethan, we were fortunate enough to be there at the inauguration and seeing you take that oath. And it was just it was a cold day. It was a phenomenal day. And can you believe that 4 years have gone by so fast?
Yeah, you know, it is. It's been going by pretty quickly, but, you know, what a privilege this has been to serve the Commonwealth for me and my wife, Pam, and had so many friends that have been supportive. And, you know, we've had a majority in the House and Senate, and we've really been able to get a lot of good things done. I've got about 6 months left and, you know, still have a lot of things that we want to get accomplished. So we're going to stay busy for the next 6 months. But you know, what I want, Eric, is when I finally turn the key over to whoever the next governor is and their administration, you know, I want Virginia to be in as good a shape as it can be. And so I'm going to strive to do that every day until my time is up here at the end of the year.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, you know, when we talk about your time as governor, you know, every governor tends to deal with a crisis. You know, that's been kind of the theme that we've seen in recent history, whether it be the Virginia Tech shooting or whether it be, you know, the march in Charlottesville. You know, it was something that we saw during your time period that not only affected Virginia, but affected the entire world. And that was a global pandemic. Being a physician like you are, a surgeon, a health professional, what was your thought when you heard that this pandemic was here?
Well, you're exactly right, Eric. There had been a number of crises, and you know, you mentioned Charlottesville. I just, before we get to the pandemic, you know, I was lieutenant governor, actually running for governor in August of 2017 when that tragedy happened, and white supremacists marching into a beautiful city in Virginia where University of Virginia is, spewing their hatred and bigotry, and of course we lost several lives, and that really started a process in Virginia of equity and embracing diversity, and a lot of talk about the Confederacy and the history in Virginia, and the monuments and statues of most of them have come down now, and then obviously we had the tremendous tragedy in Minneapolis, during my governor's term, and that certainly was cause for just a lot of unrest, and that was justifiably so, and so we've been able to do a lot of criminal justice reform, and we can talk about that during your show, but it's been a time when it's been very difficult for Virginians, and again I think we've been able to listen and learn a lot from what happened, and really make some good changes to make Virginia more diverse, and what's so important to me is to make Virginia inclusive, and so I'm proud of what's happened in Virginia over the last few years, what we've been able to get accomplished. But regarding the pandemic, Eric, our first case was March the 7th, over a year ago, and wow, what a journey this has been. And the pandemic's been really hard on Virginians. I think overall we're in a much better place today, but businesses have been lost. People have lost their homes, their employment. We had over 1.5 million Virginians who applied for unemployment, and we've done everything we can to try to help them. As you may remember, when all this pandemic started, there was absolutely no leadership coming out of Washington.
Right.
Matter of fact, the president said that, it would go away like a miracle. Everybody remembers that. Well, it didn't go away like a miracle, and said everybody could get a test, and that was not accurate. We were literally competing for, remember, the PPE, the personal protective equipment. Governors, were looking overseas, especially to Asia, to see if we could get a supply. So that's a lot better now. Then we started competing on how we could get everybody tested. And now certainly we have the vaccination rollout, which overall is going well. But it's been a rough year. And, it's put into focus, Eric, a lot of inequities that exist. Access to health care, access to education, access to business opportunities. And so, we were in a fairly strong position prior to COVID-19, but I really think we've learned a lot, and Virginia will come out of this even stronger and will be a more equitable state because of it. So still got some work to do, but I'm proud of what's happened so far.
Absolutely. Governor, if you could, take us just for a brief moment, after COVID hit here a year ago, and as you talk about the battle for PPE and all of that, that seems like ancient history, but it was just a year ago. Take us into the Situation Room, the talks with your cabinet, just briefly, and how you gave your administration the charge to move forward to ensure that Virginia not only came out of this, but came out of it better.
Well, it's a great question, Eric, and it does seem like it's been a long time ago. But, when we started this, again, the first case being on March the 7th, we were meeting every day with our staff, my chief of staff, our communications folks, the emergency management folks, public safety. All of these people were involved, and we literally met every day and went over the data. I don't know if you remember, this was kind of interesting yesterday when I was out campaigning. I talked to some folks, and we were having press conferences every day, and which was a lot of work, but I think it was important to give Virginians accurate and up-to-date information. But yesterday I had a couple people in separate occasions come up to me and say, we really appreciate the press conferences you did. And so one of them said, I don't pay that much attention to the TV, but every day at 2 o'clock I knew you were going to be on the TV. And
wow. He
said I would stop what I was doing and listen. And so, like I said, we've tried to communicate with folks and make sure they have updated information. And I think because of that, Virginia has some of the lowest numbers of cases and also the lowest number of deaths. And so overall, Virginia followed the guidelines, and they've really played by the rules and tried to do the right thing. And I think we're in a much better place. I will tell you, interestingly, Eric, our economy, despite COVID-19, is really doing well. Right now, there obviously have been some businesses that have been hurt, like the hospitality industry, restaurants, hotels, entertainment venues. But the revenue coming into Virginia, a lot of people, during this did a lot of online shopping, people buying houses and cars, and so that's kept Virginia afloat. And as you know, we've talked about this before, but we've done a lot of work to diversify our economy. We had a plan called Rebuild Virginia, where we gave people assistance to keep their businesses going. So it's been a lot of work, Eric, but we've had a good team. And like I said, I couldn't be prouder of Virginians for really trying to do the right thing. And as I said earlier, we're going to come out of this a lot stronger than we went into it.
Absolutely. And, as I was driving into the radio station today, I picked up a family member from the airport, and I was showing them, our great region, and driving on the interstate, and I'm seeing the sun, I'm seeing all the people that are headed toward, the beach area and the like. And I started thinking, Virginia's reopening, and we're not just reopening, but we're reopening safely, doing the necessary things that we need to do to keep everybody safe. Talk about some of the efforts on your end and your administration that you've put into action and you're looking forward to get Virginia businesses open, schools, and higher education and the like.
Yeah, well, just to back up a little bit, I think people would be interested and remember some of this. It was really important when COVID began in Virginia to make sure people had access to testing, and to make sure that we were doing that equitably and reaching out to, communities that perhaps may be underserved. And initially, the tests that we had, which were only, 50 to 100, we had to send to Atlanta to the CDC. And the turnaround time was like 10 to 14 days, and that made it very difficult for, our providers, our nurses and doctors that were taking care of these individuals. So, we really worked hard to make sure that everybody had the opportunity to be tested. And, we were testing 10,000, 20,000 individuals a day. So that went well, and we finally got the amount of PPE that we needed. Well, now what we're, working on is the vaccination rollout. And overall, that's gone real well. But I want your listeners to know a couple things I would emphasize. One is that we have 3 effective and safe vaccines: the Moderna, the Pfizer, and the J&J. And of course, the J&J is just one shot, and then you're done. And we've had mass vaccination clinics. We had one there at Military Circle in Hampton Roads. Now individuals can go to our pharmacies. They can go to their primary care providers. We're also having mobile units that are going into various communities. So I really encourage everybody, Eric, if they haven't already been vaccinated, to take advantage of that. That's really going to be the way that we can get this pandemic in the rearview mirror. And as a pediatrician, I think that's what I did for probably 30 years, just down the street from Norfolk State. But the vaccination is available for those 12 and above. We anticipate probably by late October, early November, it'll go down to age 6, and then even lower than that. And, what we're seeing now, it's kind of interesting. We're seeing more teenagers being hospitalized. And we also know that, these teenagers can carry the virus. So I really encourage everybody out there to, not only for themselves, but for their children as well. And I would just say, as a pediatrician, we do feel that the vaccine is safe and effective. Now, what we're doing, Eric, to get the economy back up and running, we have a couple different avenues, and if anybody needs help with this, to let our office know, we'll let you know what's available. But we have the PPP loans, which are for small businesses. We also have a program called Rebuild Virginia, where businesses can apply for grants and money to help keep their businesses afloat. We've really tried to pursue education through our community colleges. We have a program called G3 now where people can apply to go to community college without incurring any debt. So it's free tuition and also help with wraparound expenses like books and transportation and child care. So we're really doing everything that we can to help people get back into the workforce. But the main thing I would emphasize right now, Eric, is just everybody really needs to get vaccinated, and we need to get, I know everybody's heard us talk about this herd immunity, but we need to get to around 70-75%. We're actually real close. We're at 68% of adults in Virginia have had at least one shot. So if we push just a little bit harder, again, and the houses of worship, our faith leaders, everybody's really doing a wonderful job, trying to make sure we reach out and communicate with people and let them know how important it is to get vaccinated.
Governor, you talk about vaccination, and I see where the confidence is going up in the great, what has been called the miracle in the vow. And when we look at the science. When you look at the science, look at the studies, it pretty much speaks for itself. And one thing that we noted, and I think that was also brought out nationwide, is that, the Commonwealth, we were fortunate because we had a chief executive officer, a governor, who's also a doctor. So it was not just talking from, talking points, but it's something, as you mentioned, as a pediatrician, you have intimate knowledge about it. Tell us a little bit about your time in the mansion and the campaign platform that you put out. A lot of people run on platforms. You got to have it. But it was a mission that you set out to accomplish certain goals. And as you come to the end of your administration, talk about some of those goals that you will look back and say, I'm grateful that this is a part of our legacy, my legacy, and that we've helped to move Virginia forward.
Yeah, that's a great question. Let me bring President Obama into this very briefly, because that's one of the things that I have continued to work on. He put in place the Affordable Care Act, and he promised Americans that we would have access to health care. And, part of that was Medicaid expansion, and we've been able to do that because of the makeup of our House and Senate. And because of that, Eric, now 500,000 Virginians, that's a lot of people, have access to seeing a doctor.
Absolutely.
The other thing I just want to say about President Obama is that he, just like I do, he followed the science and the data. He's been very supportive of what we're doing, with the pandemic. And so is President Biden. It's just been so nice to have leadership in Washington that, number one, cares about people like you and me, and that follows the science and is committed to keeping us healthy. And, it was so tough, Eric, during this pandemic with our previous president who said things like putting disinfectants in your body and using ultraviolet light.
Right.
I mean, come on, give me a break. And so we were, really trying to do the right thing, and he was encouraging other things. And he made this political, Eric, which there was no excuse in that. And
right.
So, again, I got to know President Obama well. He gave me a lot of advice. I'm a big admirer of his, and now his vice president is our president, President Biden, and he's been really good to work with as well. Now, you asked me about what I wanted to get done, and, there are several things. I already talked about Medicaid expansion. That's been really important. Pam and I have been working a lot on early childhood education, and we've made a lot of progress, and it's in our budget, and now 3- and 4-year-olds in Virginia will have access to early childhood education.
Phenomenal.
That is just so important. It's an equity issue. It's also an issue about making sure our children all have an opportunity to learn and get a good start in life. But, Eric, you've heard me say this before. When one family has the means to send their children to early childhood education and another one doesn't, that's really what starts the gap between the haves and the have-nots. And if our children aren't reading by the 3rd grade, then they're at a disadvantage for the rest of their lives. So I promised when I ran 3.5 years ago that our children have access to early childhood education, and so we've been able to get that done. A couple other things I just will mention: expanded access to voting. Unfortunately, there are some people out there on the other side of the aisle that want to make it more difficult to vote, and we think that voting is the foundation of our democracy. So we got rid of the voter ID law. We expanded early voting by to 45 days, no excuse absentee voting.
Wow.
We're allowing people to use drop boxes, and so I'm proud of that work. Eric, we've also done a lot of work on common sense gun safety. We had that tragedy 2 years ago in Virginia Beach where 12 people lost their lives, and you all remember I brought the legislature back.
Yes.
And introduced 7 pieces of what I call common sense gun legislation. Well, the Republicans left town after 90 minutes. And, Virginians said enough is enough. And finally, we got our majority in the House and the Senate, and we've been able to pass, some common sense gun legislation. So that's good. Making Virginia more welcoming and inclusive, that's been important to me. How we educate our children, how we, make sure that we talk about our history, our 400 years of history, how we've been more open to the LGBTQ community, the women's ERA, Equal Rights Amendment. And then, Eric, a lot of work, we talked about and we've been able to accomplish with criminal justice reform, raising the felony threshold, the felony larceny threshold.
Yeah.
I got my words mixed up. And then, as you probably know, one last thing, and then I'll let you ask some more questions. I'm doing too much talking probably, but
oh no, you're fine.
Our marijuana laws in Virginia were written to discriminate against people of color. We know that people of color are about 3 times more likely to be arrested for using marijuana, 3 times more likely to be convicted. It ruins people's lives, and so that will be legalized come July 1st. So a lot of things we've been able to do, and again, I have a little bit more work to do, but overall, I'm pleased with our progress.
That is a list that I think any elected official, especially chief executive officer of a state or even the leader of our country, would be proud to say this is a part of what we're doing to make things fair. You may not agree with everything, but it makes things fair and equitable across the board. And now
Hey, Eric,
yeah.
One other thing I failed to mention that probably one of my proudest days was at Greensville Correctional Center when we signed the legislation to get rid of the death penalty in Virginia. And, if you look at our history in Virginia unfortunately had one of the highest rates of executions. That's not something anybody should be proud of. And also the majority of those executions were in people of color. And so that was a proud day for me to be able to sign that piece of legislation.
Absolutely. And I remember that day. We actually did a show on that because, again, a lot of things that have been happening here during your time period in the mansion, we've made national news and national strides, but not just for publicity purposes, but really to move people forward. And as I stated, equitably across the board. Yeah. Now, I will take a point of privilege here to talk about another highlight here at Norfolk State University, your support of not just the university itself, but also the innovative things that we're doing here, more specifically the Center for African American Public Policy, which your office has supported, the legislature has supported, along with which this show is part of the outreach of it. So your support for that, and where we look at various areas for research purposes, getting policymakers to the community to really talk about issues that are important to them, is a major key and major piece in order to bridge the disconnect between government and the community.
Eric, I am so proud of Norfolk State, and I've gotten to know Dr. J real well, and she's doing phenomenal work there along with her staff, and some really good programs there. Cybersecurity is something that Norfolk State has done a lot of work on, and just all the different programs that they have available now. And as you probably know, we're working together collaboratively with Centera and some with Old Dominion on a public health program. And I think that will really be helpful for Hampton Roads as well. So, like I said, Norfolk State is doing some really good things, and I appreciate your leadership there.
You know, Governor, I can't believe, it's we're almost out of time, but, it's good to hear your voice. I know you've been busy. We haven't had a chance to chat in a while, but you're doing a phenomenal job. But before you leave, this Tuesday is the June primary here in the Commonwealth of Virginia. We have the Democratic primary because, of course, the Republican Party held their delegate convention earlier and have their candidates who are going to run for statewide offices in November. But just in the last few moments, we have the offices, statewide offices and local, but we're talking state here, for governor, attorney general, and lieutenant governor coming up on June 8th for those Democratic candidates that are going to represent the Democratic Party in the November general election. Talk to our voters and our listeners a little bit about the importance of getting out there and voting, if they haven't done so already, voting on Tuesday.
Thank you for allowing me to do that, Eric. I was in Hampton Roads yesterday. I started off in Hampton, and then I was over in Portsmouth with Senator Louise Lucas doing some campaigning. And all of the things we've been talking about, Eric, have happened because we've elected Democrats to these offices. And you've heard me say this before, and I apologize if I'm getting political, but, I'm proud to be a Democrat. And when we elect Democrats, good things happen in Virginia, and we cannot take any chances of going back. I mean, if it switched, if the party switched in Virginia, all of these things that I've just been talking about, whether it be access to education or criminal justice reform or voting reform, they would be at risk of, we would be at risk of losing those. And so I really encourage everybody to get out there on Tuesday and vote. And then, as you all know, we're going to have an election in November also. So make sure you get registered and, look at the candidates that are running. But anyway, it's really, really important to exercise your right to vote. And I encourage everybody to do that. It's safe now. They're going to ask you probably if you go indoors to wear a mask, especially if you haven't been vaccinated. But get out there and vote and make sure that we continue to keep our democracy strong. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Governor, it looks like we're out of time, but I want to thank you so much for coming on air with us here on State of the Water at WNSB radio station here at Norfolk State University. Congratulations on a successful administration and a successful time as governor thus far. And like you said, you still got 6 more months and a lot to do. So we're looking forward to you working with stakeholders, policymakers, and the community to move Virginia forward and make us stronger.
Absolutely. Eric, thanks so much for having me. You're a dear friend, and I appreciate that. And I look forward to getting back to 757.
I hear you. Thank you so much, Governor. Have a wonderful Sunday.
All right, you too. Bye-bye.
Bye. Well, again, we'd like to thank Governor Ralph Northam for joining us here on State of the Water. Again, talking about a lot of the highlights during the time period of his administration, but also during the time of COVID, getting us from one side to the other. And we're looking at the other side of it. And together we are definitely stronger. But he also talked about the importance of get out and voting for the June 8th primary, this Tuesday, if you haven't already voted. In the next half hour, after this commercial break, we're going to talk about the one local race here in the city of Norfolk that is probably one of the most important races in this primary for the city of Norfolk, and that's for Norfolk's Commonwealth's Attorney's Office. In the second half hour, we're going to talk about and have an interview with each candidate that's running. And for those of you that don't know, this position, whoever wins the primary, more than likely will be the next Norfolk Commonwealth's attorneys in here in the city. Also, we'll talk about our new community initiative, The People's Voice, which will be today at 4 o'clock at New Hope Community Center. We'll be back in just a moment after this commercial break.
Programming on Blazing Hot 91 is supported in part by
Brothers Chops, Seafood and Spirits, presenting the Brothers Jazz Series, featuring trumpeter Rick Braun. Rick Braun performing as part of the Brothers Jazz Series. Upstairs in the Law, June 17th, 18th, 19th, and 20th. 2 shows nightly, 6 p.m. and 8:30 p.m. Sunday, 3:30 and 6 p.m. Brothers Chops, Seafood and Spirits, 200 East Plume Street in Norfolk. For reservations, brothersnorfolk.com.
Support for WNSB provided by Rugged Evolution Beard Care, featured in Essence Magazine. Rugged Evolution Beard Care, offering 16-scented balms and oils, shampoos, accessories, including leave-in beard conditioner for all men hair types and facial styles. Rugged Evolution's complete product line and information is available at www.ruggedevo.com. Rugged Evolution Beard Care, www.ruggedevo.com. Rugged is the new smooth. Rugged Evolution wishes you a happy Father's Day.
This is Stay the Water. I'm your host, Dr. Eric Claville. Thank you so much for joining us back here for the second half hour of our show. In the first half hour, we talked with Governor Ralph Northam, where we talked about various highlights of his administration, and more specifically, the importance of voting in the June 8th primary. Now, let's talk about the June 8th primary here in the Commonwealth. This Tuesday, if you haven't already voted early, is the primary in order to select the candidates that will represent the Democratic Party in the general election in November. Again, you're voting Tuesday, if you haven't already voted, to select the candidates in the Democratic Party that will represent the Democratic Party in the November general election. The Republicans have chosen their candidates. Now it's time for the Democratic primary. But I want to talk more about, and we've talked to the candidates for governor, lieutenant governor, attorney general here on State of Water from April, May, and also here in June. Go to our website, and you can go to our YouTube page. Go to WNSBonline.org to access those. Listen to the candidates. Listen to their platforms. Listen to the hard questions we asked them for you before you make your decision. But I want to talk about an important election that's happening in Norfolk also on Tuesday, and that's to choose the next Norfolk's Commonwealth's attorney. That's right. The current Norfolk's Commonwealth's attorney is not running for re-election, and there are 3 that are vying for his position. The 3 attorneys, Amina, Matheny-Willard, Ramin, Fetehi, and Megan Zwisohn. We talk with them here in our studio, and we're going to play their interviews in just a moment. But I also want to let you know that we here at WNSB, part of State of Water's community initiative, the People's Voice will hold a community forum. We're partnering with New Hope Church of God in Christ at 3241 Bress Avenue. And we're going to hold a community forum at 4 o'clock today, 4 o'clock to 5:30 at New Hope Community Center with each candidate. They'll be there at the community forum to talk about why they want to be your next Commonwealth's attorney and give you an opportunity to ask them the hard questions. That's at 4 o'clock today at New Hope Community Center, the People's Voice Community Initiative of WNSB Stay of the Water, an initiative of the Center for African American Public Policy. So we want you to join us there if you can. But right now, I want you to listen to these interviews. And now we have our first candidate for Norfolk's Commonwealth's Attorney's Office, Attorney Amina Matheny-Willard, here joining us on State of Water. Thank you so much for joining us here on this pre-People's Voice Community Forum.
Thanks for having me. Absolutely.
Well, we've talked about previously how important this primary is, which is this Tuesday coming up, and how important it is for individuals to come out and vote, because whoever wins this primary will become the Norfolk Commonwealth's Attorney's Office by default. Now we know the general election is in November, but because there are no other candidates running outside of the Democratic primary, we understand that this is the moment, this is the time. So in leading up to our community forum, which would be at 4 o'clock this Sunday, 4 o'clock today, tell us why you want to run for Norfolk's Commonwealth's attorney and why our listeners should vote for you.
Okay, so first I want to say, as you said, that this is a wake-up call to the city of Norfolk. This is a crucial election that directly affects our lives and the lives of our loved ones. So as you indicated, My name is Amina Matheny-Willard. I'm one of 3 candidates for Norfolk's Commonwealth Attorney, which is the head prosecutor position in the city of Norfolk. I graduated from Booker T. Washington High School. My mother graduated from Norfolk State University, and my kid's grandfather was the owner of Walsh Transmission on Wilson Road in Compostela. My husband is a retired Navy veteran, and he now works as a civilian in the military. I am the only African American in this race, and this is significant because that means I'm the only candidate that looks like the people Norfolk's criminal injustice system has victimized for centuries. I'm the only person who has 2 black sons who have had encounters with overly aggressive police officers and whose vehicles have been searched illegally by the police. I'm the only person with 49 years of lived experiences as a black woman in this country and as a black mother of 2 black sons. One of my sons has been involved in this criminal injustice system. He has mental health challenges and also substance addiction challenges as well. And my other son is transgender. I'm the only candidate with over 20 years experience as a criminal defense attorney. And this is significant because I've had detailed conversations with my clients, many of whom have been overcharged, overlooked, and unfairly targeted. Wow. And I've had detailed conversations with their family members and friends. And I've been in the trenches standing up to prosecutors, police officers, and judges on behalf of my clients for over 20 years, the same way that I'll stand up to the current establishment on behalf of the citizens in the city of Norfolk.
Wow.
In fact, recently there was, yesterday, one of the social activists in the city of Norfolk talked about a case of Taj Hoskins. And that's a case where all 3 of the candidates, all 3 of us, had an opportunity to take a stand against police misconduct and corruption that occurred in the Taj Hoskins case, and I was the only candidate that actually did what I have promised I would do and that I will continue to do as Norfolk's Commonwealth Attorney. I would keep my promises. None of that is going to change, depending on, based on what the circumstances are. So again, all 3 of us had an opportunity to speak up. I was the only one that spoke up, which is what I will continue to do as Norfolk's Commonwealth Attorney. I'm also the only candidate who's committed to using the power of the Commonwealth Attorney's Office in a non-traditional way. So the traditional use of this power has been and will continue to be with my opponents to take whatever charges the officers charge as gospel, stack additional charges against the citizens of Norfolk, and then ask the judge to give the citizens of Norfolk extraordinarily long sentences. So this is the traditional use of the prosecutor's powers, and it's basically it fuels mass incarceration. And right now, and these are the statistics. Norfolk, the city of Norfolk, sends more juveniles, more children to juvenile prison than any other city in the entire Commonwealth of Virginia. So that's upstate. Again, than any other city in the Commonwealth. And that's the traditional use of the prosecutor's power is what fuels this mass incarceration, not only for adults, but our children. So my non-traditional use of this power will divert nonviolent offenses away from the criminal system. So instead of a police officer charging a homeless person with trespass and sending them to jail, I would make sure the NEST program and the hotel programs are available so that these officers can call these shelters and send them to shelters instead of jail. Instead of charging children with felony robbery for taking a bike, I would appropriately charge children with misdemeanor offenses, and I would encourage the child victim as well as the child offender to talk to each other, which is one of my platforms of restorative justice, because these people have to go back into the same community together. So the ideas that I have for crime prevention and rehabilitation, which include a village approach by involving representatives throughout the city of Norfolk, come from my lifetime of lived experiences as an African American woman and as a mother and as a defense attorney, a criminal defense attorney of over 20 years. So neither of my opponents can bring this type of experience and compassionate leadership based on both my lived experiences and my position as a criminal defense attorney for over 20 years. So I know that I am the best and most qualified attorney for this position. I'm going against the establishment on behalf of the underserved citizens in the city of Norfolk. So I'm asking every registered voter in Norfolk to come out for early voting. Early voting is on Saturday, June 5th at City Hall between 8:30 and 5. So that's tomorrow, or depending on when this is aired, it's Saturday, June 5th between 8:30 and 5. Election day, as you indicated, is June 8th. So that is the last day to vote for Norfolk Commonwealth Attorney, and you would go to the same place you voted for president. If you don't know where to go, you can go to iwillvote.com and put your address in. So, yes, June 8th is a crucial date. I'm the last name on every ballot, but I would be the first woman in office. So I'm asking everybody to come out and vote on June 8th. My website, where my platform is www.amina4norfolk.com.
Well, you heard it here. We have candidate Amina Matheny-Willard, who is running to be your next Norfolk Commonwealth's attorney. The election is this Tuesday. Like you said, you can go out and vote wherever you voted for president, wherever you voted for, you're going to vote for governor, exact same place. Go vote. Make sure your voice is heard. But those of you who have already early voted, your vote is going to count because of great legislation that was pushed by individuals that we put in the General Assembly. So we want you to continue to stay engaged, continue to go to the website that was mentioned by the candidate so that you can learn more about her platform. Amina, we're looking forward to seeing you tonight at the People's Voice Community Forum, which is at 4 o'clock at New Hope Community Center. And we look forward to hearing more about your platform along with you and the other candidates. Thank you so much for being a part of State of the Water and a part of our community initiative, the People's Voice.
Thank you so much for having me.
Next, we have our second candidate for the office of Norfolk Commonwealth's Attorney Office, Attorney Ramin, who's running to be your next Commonwealth's attorney. Thank you so much for joining us here on State of the Water.
Glad to be here. Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. Well, as I've been discussing earlier in the show, this is our pre-show for our People's Voice Community Forum, which is our community initiative as a part of the Center for African American Public Policy and State of the Water, in order to really go to the people. And this community forum will highlight the candidates that are running to be Norfolk Commonwealth's attorney, which is going to be at New Hope Community Center today at 4 o'clock. That's today at 4 o'clock. So let us know why our listeners and others in the city of Norfolk should vote for you to be their next Commonwealth's attorney.
Absolutely. I am running to be our next Commonwealth's attorney because I understand that the brand of justice that people in the criminal system get too often depends on whether they're rich or poor, what neighborhood they're from, and whether they're white or black. Structural racism is real. The movement for Black lives is legitimate. And we who are prosecutors in the criminal justice system who've been called to do justice too frequently don't dispense justice and make criminals out of people who otherwise wouldn't be criminals. I believe in trying to narrow the gap in justice between the rich, the privileged, and the white, and everyone else. So my values are Norfolk's values, knowing that we shouldn't be criminalizing poverty, we shouldn't be criminalizing homelessness, we shouldn't be criminalizing substance use, and we shouldn't be criminalizing black and brown skin.
Right.
But beyond that, I'm also the most qualified of the three candidates who's running in this election. I am a local guy. I grew up in Virginia Beach. I went to high school at Norfolk Academy in Norfolk, and then went to Yale and to Columbia Law School. I served as a law clerk for a Virginia Supreme Court justice, and my first job in the criminal law was as a public defender in the city of Richmond. That means that out of the three candidates who are running in the Democratic primary, I am the only one who has both sat in a jail cell and talked to my client about what he or she was facing, both adults and children. I represented both. And the only one who has tried a jury trial as a public defender, tried a jury trial as a state prosecutor, and tried a jury trial as a federal prosecutor. Many, many juries. I've seen both sides of the criminal system. I've helped both people accused of crimes, overcharged with crimes, hammered by prosecutors, and I've also tried to be fair and just as a prosecutor. Part of the reason, in fact, that I became a prosecutor is that I became very frustrated with the system when I worked in the mid-2000s, watching prosecutors hammer people who did not need to be hammered. Did it just because they could, not because they should. So that is something that means that not only are my values right for Norfolk, but also my experience is right. Finally, Norfolk has one of the biggest and busiest Commonwealth attorneys' offices. We have 40 lawyers and 45 staff, so 85 people. I've been in Norfolk for the last 8 years working. I've lived in Norfolk for all but 18 months of the last 14 years. So I've seen up close what we do right and what we do wrong. Greg Underwood, our current Commonwealth attorney, endorsed me and asked me to run for this position, has put me in a position to lobby in the General Assembly for marijuana decriminalization and legalization, for bail reform, for expungements and sealing, for the abolition of the death penalty, which I called for in Norfolk at City Hall in January. I am in the best position to take over this office and to ensure that we prosecute the small number of people who are causing the large number of problems while showing mercy, diversion, and assistance to the vast majority of people who get caught up in the criminal system out of no fault of their own.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, again, you mentioned your connection to the area. You went to school here, you raised your family here, and you practice here. And your passion, we hear it in your voice and also through your platform. If you could point out one or two other aspects of your platform that our listeners can learn more about you and delve a little bit more into.
Absolutely. I am a proven commodity. I'm a proven prosecutor and a proven criminal justice reform advocate. You don't have to take my word for it. You can see the work that I've done on my website, which is FetehiNorfolk.com, F-A-T-E-H-I. I've been very fortunate that Greg Underwood has put me in a position to be the chair of our office's Criminal Justice Reform Working Group, which means that in 2019, when we were all over the newspapers because we were dismissing marijuana cases, I was the architect of that policy.
Wow.
We knew that marijuana criminalization itself was a product of racism. We knew that black people and white people use marijuana at the same rates. We knew that 47% of Norfolk residents are white and 43% are black. We learned that 80% of marijuana possession charges in Norfolk were of black people. Racially disparate outcomes that were completely unjust and were saddling people with criminal records. I wrote the policy to dismiss those cases when we were in the paper for our judges blocking us. I sued our judges in the Virginia Supreme Court, and then I lobbied for marijuana decriminalization and legalization. We started that conversation here in Norfolk 2 years ago, and July 1st, marijuana possession will be legal. I was the architect of our no cash bail policy. Cash bail makes nobody safer. Paying to get out of jail when you're presumed to be innocent, all it does is impoverish the impoverished. And it takes money out of people's grocery bills, light bills, diaper bills. I was the architect of that policy. I'm also going to push for a number of other changes to Virginia law to make the system more fair. And finally, Norfolk is the one city in Hampton Roads where a homicide detective went to federal prison for corruption.
Wow.
A 12-and-a-half-year sentence for corruption. We have never had a reckoning with that detective's cases. I intend to form a conviction integrity unit to look into any case a citizen of Norfolk wants to know about to ensure that our past convictions hold up to our present values.
Wonderful. Give us that website one more time where our listeners and voters can learn more about you.
It is FetehiNorfolk.com, F-A-T-E-H-I, Norfolk. And, please do check it out. I've got lots more stuff on there. And I really, really believe in this city. This is a calling for me.
Absolutely. And again, you can hear more about our candidates platform at the People's Voice Community Forum, which is presented by WNSB's State of the Water, an initiative of the Center for African American Public Policy, today at 4 o'clock at New Hope Community Center. Come on out and make sure you go out and cast your vote. For those that have voted early, your vote counts, and it is being counted. For those who haven't voted, this Tuesday, you can cast your vote. Wherever you voted for president, you can cast your vote for the next Norfolk Commonwealth's attorney. Thank you so much for joining us on State of the Water. We look forward to seeing you at the community forum tonight.
Looking forward to it, too.
And we have our final candidate who's running to be your next Norfolk Commonwealth's attorney, Attorney Megan Zwisohn. Thank you so much for joining us here on State of the Water.
Thank you very much for having me. I very much appreciate this opportunity.
Absolutely. Well, as our listeners know, that this is our pre-community forum show for our community initiative of State of the Water, an initiative of the Center for African American Public Policy, the People's Voice. We're going to be, actually in a couple of hours, we're going to be at New Hope Community Center, where we're going to host and moderate the community forum for our community partners to inquire more and hear about your platform on why you and the other candidates want to be their next Norfolk Commonwealth's attorney. So tell us, what made you run for Commonwealth's attorney, and why should our listeners vote for you?
A couple things made me decide to run. The first thing I will say, and I've said to a lot of people, was Trump winning in 2016. I was angry, like a lot of people. Although I was politically active, I hadn't stepped up to run for office. It was not something I thought I would ever do. And I decided then and there, if I felt my community needed a voice that I could speak to, that I was going to run for office. And when this opportunity presented itself, that was my career. I felt it was important for me to do. The other part is I feel very strongly that a lot of positions, especially the Commonwealth Attorney's Office, have gotten away from the fact that we are, in fact, public servants. And in doing that, and although the word sort of defines itself, we have forgotten that our service is to the public, and that includes all of the public and every citizen in our city.
Absolutely. And your career, I mean, looking at your platform, your career kind of speaks to, why you're running. Tell us a little bit about your career and what got you to this point.
It's funny. A lot of people sort of think they know what they're going to be as children. I did not. I originally thought I was going to be a truck driver because I never saw a woman do it. As a 7-year-old, I, even went to law school not realizing that I was going to be a litigator and especially a prosecutor. I was raised by social activists. I had a childhood friend that was in a home with domestic violence. And so although at that age, at 10, I didn't really know what the words were, I had internalized the idea that, if you have a voice between her and my parents, you need to use it, not just for those who don't have a voice, but for those who aren't listened to. And then went through law school with that idea and sort of changed my decisions a couple times. And after graduation, still didn't know what I wanted to do. So I took a job teaching at my alma mater at Old Dominion for 2 years in 1995 and finally came across the idea of prosecuting being my way of being a voice for victims. And so I did not enter this career as idea of law enforcement. I entered it as sort of my version of, again, public service or even social work to some extent, working for victims. And because of the way I was raised, I entered it also with a very healthy knowledge of the inequities in the system and felt that I could do my part, at least, from within, and have done that through mentoring and through teaching. However, we learned that, it's really the people at the top that set the agenda for what change needs to occur and what positive things the Commonwealth Attorney's Office can be. So 24 years later, here I am. I'm still doing this job. I've been everywhere from an assistant to a deputy to now a chief deputy for the last 9 years, to even having the opportunity to be the Commonwealth attorney in Gloucester when my former boss took the bench.
Wow.
So I know I can lead. I know I can lead successfully, and I can teach what this job means, and I can teach what it should mean personally to people, that idea again, and I'm going to keep coming back to it, of public service and service to our citizens.
Speaking of public service and looking at some of your priorities on your platform, part of that is community engagement and communication across the justice system. We know that 2020 really brought out a lot of issues and inequities that we've been dealing with as a country, some more privately than others. But 2020 uncovered it all for us to see in the open, and there's no more denying it. How would you make the Commonwealth Attorney's Office more community engaged, and also how would you communicate across the justice system?
So there's several ways, and I know this sounds a little silly, but I'm going to keep doing what I have been. I've been community engaged in organizations that I feel do the right things for our community, in the sense of, in 2007, I started working with REACH, which is Reading Enriches All Children, to help underserved kids, to make sure that we keep their literacy, I should say, to keep their literacy in a positive direction, because we know that that's something that really directs where a child then becomes a young person, then becomes a young adult, goes, that need to be able to read and to have a good education. And I also work with Teens with a Purpose for the same reason, in terms of working with kids to show positive ways to use their art, to use their voice, to understand how to work within their community. Absolutely. And to be the best voice they can be for themselves. And so I've done that in my personal life, and I will be bringing that into the office. I'll be doing something similar that one of my opponents has mentioned too, as well as being more engaged with civic leagues, which is something one of my previous bosses, the Commonwealth Attorney Jack Doyle, when he was in office, did, as well as having my own personal community office hours. I have pledged, and I will do this exact thing, which is to be in different parts of the city once a week for people to just come and meet with me. I will notify everybody where I'm going to be, and I can either just listen to concerns or answer questions. I want to be in the community, and that's every part of Norfolk. And I think once we have those discussions, we can start mending some of the issues that have finally come to light. And you're right, it's about time these issues have come so in everyone's face that they cannot deny them anymore. But what I have found throughout it is the more we talk to each other, the more we all really want the same things. We want a healthy diet. We want a home that we can come home to and feel safe. We want our neighbors to treat us the way we want to be treated and the way they should be treated. And that's something that I will bring to the Commonwealth Attorney's Office that I haven't heard from some others. I'm not about divisiveness. I want to bring everyone to the table. I don't think you can have a conversation when only one side has the information. And I'll be doing the same with law enforcement. I will be having my attorneys go to roll calls to train and to discuss the issues with law enforcement. I will have attorneys on call for law enforcement to call when there is a question that needs to be answered right there, so they're not out, making split-second decisions that they don't have to make. If there's someone they can call and say, hey, is this the right call or is this not right to call, especially for things like, search and seizure. There's a lot of different ways we can bring everyone together. Absolutely. Where can our listeners find more about you, your platform, your priorities on your website? Where can they go? So they can go to meganforcommonwealth.com, and that's MEGAN and just FOR, commonwealth.com. There is an entire page with 6 pillars, priorities, and the things I plan on doing. They can also read just about my background, the things that I've done in terms of domestic violence. For instance, I was the founding member of my domestic violence clinic in law school. There's a lot of things outside of my career that I have worked on that people can learn about on my website. I'm also on Facebook. Instagram doesn't give you much information except for a few couple fun pictures. So those are the 2 main places I would look. That's attorney Megan Zwisohn, who is running to be your next Norfolk Commonwealth's attorney. We're looking forward to seeing you tonight at 4 o'clock at New Hope Community Center here in Norfolk at 3241 Brest Avenue, along with the other 2 candidates, as we attend at the People's Voice Community Forum,
which is presented by WNSB's State of the Water, where I'll be moderating an initiative of the Center for African American Public Policy. Thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you tonight.
Thank you so much, Eric.
Well, again, we hope you enjoyed those interviews for the candidates for Norfolk's Commonwealth's Attorney's Office. This June primary, this Tuesday, is very important. Join us at 3241 New Hope Community Center tonight.